Space is vast and infinite, or so we think. But in certain regions of Earth's orbit, things are getting crowded, messy, and even dangerous. We rely on satellites for everything from GPS and weather forecasting to communications and scientific research. But what happens when those satellites reach the end of their lifespan? Right now, there are thousands of dead satellites orbiting the Earth, silent, non-functioning relics of past missions, just drifting aimlessly in space. So how do we deal with this growing problem? How are we going to get rid of these dead satellites? Let's dive in. First, let's paint a picture of the problem. As of today, there are over 6,000 satellites circling our planet, but nearly 60% of them no longer work. They're just floating debris, contributing to what experts call space junk. And it's not just old satellites. There are also spent rocket stages, fragments from past collisions, and even tiny screws and paint chips hurtling through space at high speeds. This debris poses a serious threat to active satellites, space stations, and future missions. The more crowded space gets, the greater the risk of collisions, creating even more debris in what's known as the Kessler syndrome, a cascade effect where each collision leads to more collisions. So, how do we clean up this mess before it gets out of control? Several innovative solutions are in the works. One of the simplest methods is to build satellites with a planned end-of-life strategy. Newer satellites can be designed with systems that push them into a lower orbit at the end of their missions, allowing them to burn up safely in the Earth's atmosphere. But that only works for satellites in low Earth orbit. What about those way out in geostationary orbit, thousands of kilometers above us? For those, the plan is to move them to what's called a graveyard orbit, where they'll be out of the way of critical operational satellites. But even this is a temporary fix. We're essentially just sweeping the problem under the rug. That's where more high-tech solutions come into play. One idea involves using robotic spacecraft to grab and remove dead satellites. For instance, the European Space Agency is developing a mission called Clear Space 1, scheduled to launch in the coming years. It will send a space claw to latch onto a defunct satellite and safely drag it down into the atmosphere where it will burn up. The concept is simple, but scaling it up to tackle thousands of pieces of debris is a huge challenge. Another intriguing approach involves using nets or harpoons to capture space junk. Yes, you heard that right. Just like fishing in the ocean, but in space. Several tests have been conducted where nets are deployed to capture small pieces of debris and bring them down. Harpoons could pierce larger debris and reel it in for disposal. These ideas sound like something straight out of a sci-fi movie, but they're very real and could be key to cleaning up our orbit. There's also research into using lasers to zap debris from the ground. The idea is to use high-powered lasers to nudge small debris out of its orbit, causing it to re-enter the atmosphere and burn up. While still in the experimental phase, this solution could help deal with the smaller fragments that are too numerous to capture individually. But with all these innovative ideas, the real question is, who's going to pay for it? Space is a global commons. And while the debris problem affects everyone, figuring out who is responsible for the cleanup and who foots the bill is a complex issue. Space agencies, private companies, and even governments are all debating how to tackle this growing challenge. Some argue that those who create the debris should be responsible for cleaning it up, while others suggest an international fund where all spacefaring nations contribute. As more and more satellites are launched, especially with mega constellations like SpaceX's Starlink, the need for effective space debris management is becoming urgent. The good news is that awareness is growing, and companies are designing new satellites with better end-of-life plans. But there's still a long way to go before we can confidently say we have a handle on space junk. So, what do you think? Should we invest heavily in cleaning up our orbital neighborhood now? Or should we focus on preventing more junk from being created in the first place? Is there a future where we might see space cleanup crews zipping around in orbit, or will space debris become an even bigger problem for future generations? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And if you want more out-of-this-world insights, be sure to hit that subscribe button and join us here at the Universe, where we explore the wonders and challenges of space and beyond.